So for the participation activity this week, we're going to create a simple app to display information for upcoming performances at St. Scholastica. St. Scholastica has this spotlight program where we have upcoming events, and so we're going to do kind of a version of this, but within an app. We're going to hard code this information, which isn't the best feature, but again, we're really focused this unit on how to create intents and work with other apps. And so we're just going to hard code this information. Normally, this we'd want to be like pulling this from an XML file or JSON web service or something like that. But you can't have everything. Okay, so you're going to download this starting app here and open it. I've got it opened up here. We'll be working with the main activity file and also the activity.main area. So in the layout, the activity.main file are the two we'll be looking at. Let's look at the activity main. The layout for every activity will have a picture of the activity, some information, the text string here that we'll fill up with a couple lines. And there'll be three buttons: web info, add to calendar, and map. And each of these buttons will go to a different intent. So this will go to the web page for this activity. This will add that activity to our calendar, and this will generate a map of St. Scholastica or wherever the activity is located, generally at St. Scholastica. So we have this set up for one activity, one event coming to St. Scholastica. You're going to want to duplicate this for two more. So let's just go through this. So the first thing we want to do is set up the layout. So we want to change the layout so we can have at least two more performances here. With images, we have the text view, and then we have the three buttons set up. Now I could just recreate this. So there's a text view at the top that says upcoming events, and then there's actually a little text view down here that's the status. I want to keep those, just one of those, and I want to duplicate these. Both of these are set up within linear layouts, so they're horizontal linear layouts because we have like these three buttons side by side, and then this picture and this and text side by side. You can try to work on it here and do it. I find some of this editing actually easier to do within the text view. So if I go click on the text tab here, I'll see it in XML here. And so I can see here's my initial text view at the top for upcoming events. Then I start a linear layout for the image button and the text view that ends the linear layout, another linear layout for the buttons, and then a text view down here. I'm going to just duplicate these linear layouts. So again, I'm just going to highlight this text here, copy it, and paste it in here, and then paste it again for this. Now I've got to watch some of the IDs. I want to set up different IDs for everything. So I'm just going to scroll up at the top, and so here's the first one. The linear layout, and again it's highlighting these IDs, so these are the original ones here, and this is my second linear layout, and so I'm going to call this image button 2, text view 2, web info, or button, button 2 web info, button 2 that calendar, and button 2 that map. Same here. This is the next line. I'm going to just add some 3s to this so that every ID is unique. So now if I go back to the design view, I should see it all set up here with multiple buttons. Again, so we have add calendar, button 1 calendar, and then now this would be button 2 calendar. I guess I could have redone these over here. Button 3 calendar here. And then I want to then I'll put in some different information here for everything, and also different images, and the images get a little more complicated. So let's just go select some. So I'm just going to go, I've clicked on the spotlight performances here, and let's do, I'm just going to do the first two events that are coming in. Here's another colloquium that's coming in here. So again, I can grab this information here. Now there is a spot for more information, and this is the website I want to link to for this. But For my app, I just want some basic information for that event. So I'm just going to go back and actually just grab this information. And put it in here. So this will be my second event. Here's my text that's set up there. For that, and same here, I can do another event here. I'm going to do this. Oops, I can grab this text here. So again, just fill in some text from one of these areas, from one of these events. And we're also going to switch the images around. So these images, these are actually image buttons here, and their source is image value here. So let me go back to our project here. Inside resources, under values, I'm sorry, under like this MIDI map, there are some different values. They're images here. And they're actually at different sizes, so that the Android creates multiple different copies at different sizes, so that depending on what your screen size is, it can display a different one here. So this refers to this, and the size of these images will automatically be set up for us. So I'm gonna want to copy. So I'm gonna take these two images. I'm just gonna save these images. Right click and say Save Image As, and save it out there. So I'm saving both these images to the folder. Right now I'm just saving them to my app folder. I'm giving them some names like Spotlight 1 or 2 or 3, so I can just remember which ones they are here. So I've saved those two images out here. Now to import those in Android, we're gonna import them as kind of icons that we can use as buttons and stuff like that. So under resources, I'm going to say new image asset. Pops up this object here. I'm going to leave this here as just a launcher icon, adaptive and legacy sort of stuff. I'm going to call this Spotlight 2. And then for the path, I'm going to go locate where these are out there. So let's see if I can find them. So I've located like this image, Spotlight 2, that I saved as a JPEG. Bring it in. Now there's some resizing, some trimming you could do. I'm not going to worry too much about that. We're not going to deal too much with that today. So I'm just going to bring that in, say next. And again, it's going to save versions of these in our resource file. So I'm just going to say finish and hit OK. It's going to want to know if we should save these to Git, and I'm going to say fine, say make this part of our project. So now once I've got that in there, is a Spotlight 2 kind of file. I should be able to go in here and select my image, and then on that image select here's my source. I can hit that and select this new version of it that I want to use, and bring that in there. And again, we're not going to deal too much with these image things. I just want to show you the basics of that. So likewise, just import the other image type here as an image asset. Give it some name. Locate where it's at. And again, we can set that up as the image here. So hopefully you can try to get these images in here. Again, this is not a critical part of this course, so if you struggle with that, we really want to move you on to the intents with these buttons. So we've got these buttons here set up. Let's look at those. So in the main activity, we have the onCreate method here, and this is where we usually set up things, all the text views and objects like this, and we'd set up our buttons here. But here we're just calling this setup button click events. So this is just a method that sets up all our button clicks here, and so we're going to set up each one here. So it finds each button by an ID and then sets up a listener for each button for us to use. And again, updates the status information quickly, but doesn't have code in here for actually doing things. So let's just do each one. So if we're going to click up and go to the web page for a button, so back here, so to get web information for a button, we want to do this stuff. We want to set up the URI for it and set up the intent. So I'm going to put that code there. Now for the actual URL that we're going to go to, we're going to have to get that for a sec. Let me just import this class so we have that set up. So if we go in here in my Spotlight activity, for this event, I can go to this URL. So I'm going to start with this first one, just this with a generic URL, because this event is actually old, and so we don't have an actual link for it. So I'm just going to paste the generic Spotlight URL in there. Okay, so we've set that up, and next we're going to make sure that check the package activity and make sure things are set up for that for that URI. I mean that intent, and there's something that can process this. So I'm going to Control Alt Enter. I'm in to do this, to do some imports. Alt Enter to import that. And then now for our intent here, we created our intent called web intent here, and so I'm going to make sure I use that here. And then the last thing we want to do is start the activity. I don't have that listed here. It was listed back up here when we did it, so I just have to do a start activity. And if you remember when we looked at this tutorials, we talked about the intents, talked about verifying that there was intent ready, and then said then you have to do the start activity to do it. So the last thing we're going to do is do the start activity. And again, we want to use the intent we created for our web intent here. I'm going to combine, like I said, just change this a little bit. We get our list of how many activities are out there that can do this. So here we're going to now check if there is an app to view web pages. And then I'm just going to do a check here. I'm just going to say if this is greater than 0, then there is an activity, and I'm going to set my start activity right up in there. Okay, so I'll put a comment in here. Found at least one app to view web pages. Start that app. Okay, so this is what we're going to do here to set up and run this. To set up our web page, to go to this URL, we create this intent, we check with the package manager, we get a list of activities that can view that, we check to make sure that there's at least one activity to do that, and then we do the start intent. Okay, the calendar one is basically set up for us. That's the next one here, button calendar. We do this. We have some code in here. We set the title, the location, and the date, the beginning date, end date, and those are put in here for us to use, and we start the activity here. This was done last year before they were stressing this need to do some package managing. So I'm actually going to copy this code and put it down here also. So, and again, I'm using a different intent. This is called my calendar intent or cal intent. So I'm just going to make sure I'm using that in my code here. Oops, same here. Okay, so this sets that up. The last intent we have is map intent. So if I look back here, this is how we set up a map intent. And again, then we're going to check with our package manager to make sure there's something that can display the map. I got to modify my comments to view calendar stuff. And this code, this is going to be check if there's an app to display maps. And I have to just make sure I'm using the correct intent in all my code that when I'm doing this copy and paste in here. So declare my map intent, check to do it, and then start that up, assuming I find an app of that type. I want to change this to be the location of St. Scholastica here, and so you can just use this 1200 Kenwood Avenue, Duluth, Minnesota location here. So when I run this, I'm actually running this not an emulator but on a device because I want to make sure I have a calendar and stuff set up. But it displays this stuff, and again, I've only done my first set of buttons. So if I hit web information here and click on that button on my device, it will display that spotlight information here. If I go back, I can add it to my calendar. Just warn you, if you're trying this out on your actual device, it will actually add it to your calendar, or at least it pops up this and asks you. So I'm actually going to not add this to my calendar and go back. And then the map should display this to the map. I have a couple different apps that display maps. I have the Google Maps, I have Zillow, and I have Lyft. They all will do maps. I'm just going to open up with maps here and do that. So, and it'll show me that location. So let's go back, see how we're doing here. So I'm going to stop this. So we've got all of our activities, our apps set up, including our map one. Now one thing I will note, I forgot to mention is that the example before for the map URL had some pluses and had some parsing already in there. We are calling URI.parse here, so you can actually have spaces and weird stuff in your URI, and parse will then process this automatically for you. So I usually just paste of an address or something in here, and then it will convert it. Because generally URIs cannot have like certain characters like spaces in them, and that's why we call this URI parse to kind of take care of those special features for us. Okay, so we've done these buttons. We want to do these buttons also. The calendars are going to be slightly different. The maps are probably going to be the same for them. The web information can be a little different also. What I'm going to do here is just copy that. We have this set button click. I'm just going to copy that all and make a couple more copies of that set button. Click events 2, or let's make that 3 and 2. Now we have a lot of repetitive code in here. There actually would be better ways to set up these intents, especially if we're going to do this. But again, let's try to keep this simple, I think, for this practice assignment, just to see how it goes. I want to make sure now in my main activity I call that multiple times. So I'm going to call each of these button things, and then I just want to go in and modify those. So when I set up the button 2 events, I'm going to make sure I'm grabbing the button 2 web infos and tying information to that. Same here, the button 2 calendars, grab the right IDs for those. Set up those buttons. I want to go in there and change, like when they view the web page, I want to view some different information for that. So like in Spotlight, they have some detailed information about each of these events. I'm going to grab that URL and make sure I have that in my event setup. Most of the rest of this should be fine, ready to go. Same with the calendar event. I'm going to do this. The action is insert. The type is a calendar. And again, the title is going to be different. So I'm going to make sure I grab the right title here. And then the time when it is. I got an extra line feed. That's what this line, that N is just a new line. I can get rid of that. And I just want something like that. Okay. And then the times for this are going to be different. So these this one is, I think, February 16th, 2018. Update it for this new year here. So again, I can pull the date and times for these. It's 340 to 440. Those times are actually correct there, and set up. Similarly here for your next one, we'll want to, oops, the map one is correct. We can leave, for the maps, we want to display the same address. They're all at St. Scholastic here, so you can actually leave that the same, assuming they're all at St. Scholastica. Same here when you do the third button click stuff, you can be looking at that. We want to make sure we're giving the right button IDs and setting that up. Redoing the calendar, event information. So when you run this, it should display your information again, and then if you click on the buttons, it should bring up the right information. So like here's the third activity, and should display that website. So feel free to set that up. Let me know if you have any questions on this.